The calendar read September 4th, 2009. A Thursday afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee, at a used record store on South Main Street called Groove Merchant. A young music blogger named Tyler was about to explain to an old man in a flat black hat exactly why Woodstock was a myth. Not a myth in the way facts are myths. A myth the way young men explain things they read about but never touched. And the man in the mustard yellow linen shirt leaning against the record bins behind him was going to let him finish before saying a single word. Groove Merchant smelled of cardboard sleeves and something older underneath. Decades of humidity pressed into vinyl. A ceiling fan moved the air in slow circles that didn't cool anything. The walls were floor-to-ceiling shelves, every shelf packed 2 rows deep. The front albums facing out with handwritten price tags in blue marker. A string of bare bulbs ran along the ceiling. The floors were wood, dark and uneven, worn to near black in the paths between shelves. Someone had taped a handmade sign above the register that read, "No crying over Beatles mono." "We don't have it." A radio behind the counter played something soft and very old. It was the kind of store that did not care whether you bought anything. That indifference was the only thing that kept it alive. Carlos Santana had a show at the FedEx Forum the following evening. He had flown in a day early. His hotel was 6 blocks north. He had wound his watch at 6 that morning, eaten alone at the hotel breakfast, and walked south on Main until the sight of a record store window stopped him the way record store windows always had. He pushed the door open before he had decided to. Nobody looked up. Nobody at Groove Merchant ever looked up when the door opened. That was part of the agreement. He moved down the first aisle, fingers walking along the spines of the sleeves. Hat low. Turquoise ring catching the light when he tilted an album forward. Silver bracelets pushed back on his wrist. The mustard yellow linen shirt had been with him for years, washed soft, the color of old photographs. He pulled an album partway out, read the back, slid it home. Just another old man in a hat. The man behind the counter had worked there for 31 years. His name was Raymond. He had come from Clarksdale at 19 with $40, and a box of records his mother had told him to leave behind. He had left the records behind. He had gone back for them 2 weeks later. He had never quite forgiven himself for leaving them in the first place. He was 60 now. Reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. Flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled twice. Hands that had touched more music than most people would ever hear. He ran the store with no employees, no website, and a cash-only policy that he refused to explain to anyone who asked. He had opened the store in 1978 with savings from 7 years driving a delivery truck. His mother had thought he was making a mistake. She had driven up from Clarksdale for the opening weekend and stood in the doorway looking at the half-empty shelves and said, "Raymond, what exactly is your plan?" Not a question, just the words. He had sold her 3 records that afternoon at cost. She had left without saying anything else, but she had come back every year after that, until she couldn't. He kept the last record she bought, a Mahalia Jackson, behind the counter in its sleeve. Not for sale, not for play. Just to know it was there. The prescription glasses he needed were not the ones he had. He needed new ones and had needed them for 8 months. The cost was the cost, and the store was what it was. He squinted at the receipts he had to write by hand, and held things at arm's length when the light was right. The young man had been in the store for 45 minutes. Tyler was 26, and wrote for a music blog that got 40,000 page views on a good month. He wore the kind of glasses that announced they were glasses. His notebook was open on the counter and he was talking to Raymond about authenticity in American music, which was to say he was talking at Raymond about a thing Raymond had lived inside for 60 years. He had been building toward Woodstock for 10 minutes. "The mythology of it is almost entirely constructed," Tyler said. He had a way of holding his pen while he talked, not writing, just holding. 3 days of peace and music. 500,000 people. But if you actually break down what was captured on film, what made it to the documentary, the performances that got preserved, it becomes this kind of curated legend. Santana's at Woodstock because the camera was on him. Hendrix's set was at dawn, Most of the crowd was asleep or gone. The reality is that it was a disaster logistically. Bad food, terrible sanitation, rain. The whole peace and love thing is mostly a fairy tale people chose to remember. Raymond had been quiet for a long time. He was looking at the counter. His right hand was flat on the wood. Tyler continued. The music that actually came out of that era, the studio work, what Coltrane was doing, what Miles was doing, that's where the real legacy is. Woodstock is a brand at this point. It's nostalgia product. He wrote something in his notebook. Carlos had stopped moving 2 shelves over. He had been listening for 4 minutes. He had not turned around. His hand rested on a sleeve he had not looked at. Raymond looked past Tyler, across the store. He saw the flat black hat. He saw the bracelets on the wrist. He made a calculation and said nothing. He pressed his lips together and waited. Have you ever watched someone talk about something they only read about, while the person who lived it was standing 3 feet away? Leave that story in the comments. I read all of them. Tyler noticed the silence. He looked at Raymond's face. I'm not trying to be contrarian, Tyler said. The music matters. Obviously. But the event itself, you covered it? Said a voice behind him. Tyler turned. The man in the flat black hat was standing at the end of the shelf. He had a record sleeve in one hand, not pressing any point with it, just holding it. His eyes were calm, not amused, not unfriendly, just fully present in the way that some people are and most are not. Sorry? Tyler said. Woodstock, the man said. You covered it? You were there? No, Tyler said, slightly off balance. I wasn't alive yet. But I've done a lot of research on, what did you read? Excuse me, for your research. What did you read? Tyler listed 3 books. The man in the hat nodded once at each one. He walked toward the counter slowly, looking at the album in his hand. Good books, he said. He set the album on the counter and reached into his shirt pocket. He brought out an old guitar pick. The edges were worn smooth. He set it beside the album without making a show of it. There are things they don't put in the books. Like what? Tyler said. He was trying to find the angle of this conversation, what kind of person he was talking to, what this was. The smell of the morning, the man said. August morning on a field in New York. The grass was wet. The sound equipment kept going down and people kept playing anyway, through bad monitors into a fog. There were 600,000 people, maybe more. Most of them didn't know where they were going to sleep that night, and they didn't care. He looked at Raymond. Raymond looked back. I played on the second day, the man said. We went on at midnight and played until almost dawn. I was 21 years old. I had taken something I should not have taken, and the stage lights came in and out, and I played the whole set from inside a place I cannot fully describe. Tyler stared. The man looked at him without urgency. What instrument? Tyler said. His pen was still. Guitar, the word landed and sat there. Raymond was watching Tyler's face change. He had been waiting for this. Tyler looked at the man's hands. The turquoise ring. The smooth-edged pick on the counter. Something was assembling itself in his mind, and he was not ready for what it was assembling. What's your name? Tyler said. The man picked up the album he had set on the counter. He looked at the back. Carlos, he said. He looked up. Carlos Santana. The silence in Groove Merchant was complete. The ceiling fan turned. The radio played something far away. Nothing else moved. Tyler's pen was on the counter. He had not noticed setting it down. He looked at Raymond. Raymond was looking at the wall. There was something on Raymond's face that was not quite a smile, but was very close to one. Tyler looked back at the man, at the hat, at the bracelets, at the years in the face and the stillness behind the eyes. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He started. The books are not wrong, Carlos said. His voice was even. No edge in it. The food was bad. The sanitation was something I will not describe to you. It rained on everything. Half the equipment didn't work. He paused. But there were 600,000 people who decided, on a weekend in August, that something was more important than being comfortable. That is not nothing. That is not a fairy tale. He picked up the pick from the counter and held it for a moment, looking at it. I have carried this since that night, he said. He turned it over. The surface was worn ivory smooth. This went on stage with me at 3 a.m. in a field in New York. I was 21 and I did not know yet who I was going to be. The people in that field did not know either. We found out together. He looked at Tyler. That is worth reading about, he said. But reading about it is not the same thing as knowing what the wet grass smelled like. You understand the difference. It was not a question. Tyler said, very quietly, yes. Carlos nodded once. He looked at Raymond. What do I owe you for this? He held up the album. It was a 1968 pressing of a Wes Montgomery record, dog-eared and priced at $6 in blue marker. Nothing, Raymond said. Carlos looked at him. On the house, Raymond said. Been waiting for an afternoon like this one. Carlos held the record for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket. He took out 2 things, the old pick and a folded card. He set the pick on the counter beside the Mahalia Jackson sleeve that Raymond kept behind the register. That went with me to Woodstock, he said to Raymond. I have another at the hotel. Raymond put his hand over it. He didn't say anything. His jaw worked once and stopped. Carlos unfolded the card and wrote something on the back and slid it to Tyler. My assistant's number. If you want to talk about what the books don't put in the books, the real research. He looked at the notebook on the counter. Not for the article. Just for you. He picked up the Wes Montgomery record. He tilted his hat. A small nod to both of them. He walked to the door. Mr. Santana, Tyler said. Carlos turned once. I'm sorry, Tyler said, for calling it a fairy tale. Carlos looked at him for a moment. Don't be sorry, he said. Just go find someone who was there. Ask them what the grass smelled like. He pushed the door. The Memphis afternoon light came in, then right that. The door closed. Raymond stood at his counter for a long time. He picked up the old pick and held it in 2 fingers, feeling the worn edges. He set it down. He put it under the counter next to the Mahalia Jackson record. Tyler had not moved. His notebook was open. The page was blank. He picked up his pen. He didn't write anything. He looked at the card on the counter. He folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. He stood there in the quiet store for a few minutes, listening to the ceiling fan and the radio. Then he walked out the door. He did not publish the piece he had come to Memphis to write. 3 weeks later, Tyler called the number on the card. The assistant answered on the second ring. She asked him to hold. He held for 4 minutes. Then a voice came on the line. They talked for an hour and 20 minutes. Tyler never published a transcript. He never turned it into content. He kept the notes in a notebook that he did not scan or photograph. What he did publish, 6 months later, was a long piece about a woman in Clarksdale who had been at Woodstock. She was 71. She had driven up from Mississippi in 1969 with 3 other women in a borrowed car, slept in the mud, and remembered every detail of the Sunday morning light. He found her because he called people until someone who knew her name. He drove down. He sat in her kitchen for 4 hours. He asked her what the grass smelled like. She told him. She told him other things, too. Things that had never been in any book. And when she was done, she offered him coffee, and he said, yes, please. The piece got more readers than anything he had written before. But that was not why he wrote it. Raymond still has the pick. He has been asked about it once, by a regular who noticed it behind the counter next to the Mahalia Jackson record. He said it belonged to someone who came through on a Thursday afternoon. The regular asked who. Raymond smiled and went back to reading his receipts. He holds things at arm's length still. He still needs new glasses, and still has not gotten them. But he goes home each night knowing that the store has held a specific afternoon in September 2009 inside its walls. In the wood and the vinyl and the bare bulb light. Some things you don't need to prove. You only need to have been there when they happened. He opens at 10 every morning. He closes at 6. He has not missed a day in 31 years. Some things are not fairy tales because they were perfect. They are not fairy tales because they were easy or comfortable or without cost. They are real because 600,000 people decided to be somewhere together. And because something happened there that went into the hands of the people who played, and into the memories of the people who listened, and out the door of a record store on a Thursday afternoon in Memphis, 50 years later. Still moving. On this channel, we make videos to carry what lives inside Carlos Santana's heart to the next generation. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Let's close with something Carlos Santana once said. When you are grateful, fear disappears and abundance appears. That is what Woodstock was. Not a fairy tale. Gratitude, loud enough to fill a field.